Welcome, everybody. We're glad that you're here for our webinar, OERTX Opportunities and Support for Digital Innovation. I am Kyla Torrey. I'm a program director at the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, and I have OER initiatives on my plate. So I have been working on the OER grant program and our OERTX repository and various other projects that we'll talk about during this webinar. We're very fortunate to have with us today our Deputy Commissioner, Ray Martinez. He's our Deputy Commissioner for Academic Affairs and Workforce Education. He's going to say a few words to start us off and open our session, and then we'll get right to it. So, Deputy Commissioner.
Thank you, Kyla. Appreciate it. Can you hear me okay, Kyla? Is the volume all right?
You're a bit quiet.
Uh-oh.
I think that's better.
Okay, is that any better? Can you hear me okay?
That's better.
Great, thank you, Kyla. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so glad to be with you all today on behalf of Commissioner Harrison Keller and all of our leadership team here at the Coordinating Board. I do want to welcome everyone to this important webinar to discuss OERTX opportunities and support for digital innovation. Before I give you all some quick updates on things happening here at the Coordinating Board, relevant, of course, to digital learning and distance education, I do want to start by taking this time to say to everybody, Happy National Distance Learning Week. As most of you probably know, National Distance Learning Week started yesterday. It goes through the entirety of this week and was created to generate greater awareness, best practices, and appreciation for distance learning in various fields, including K-12, corporate and military, and of course, higher education. Commissioner Keller often emphasizes how digital learning plays a vitally important role in shaping the future of higher education for Texas, and perhaps now more than ever, given the unprecedented disruption caused by COVID-19 and of course the very quick pivot to digital learning that was made by faculty across the state and of course across the nation. Last July, the Coordinating Board, through Commissioner Keller's leadership, received $175 million from the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund, otherwise known as the GEER Fund, which is made available, of course, through the Federal CARES Act. Much of these funds have been allocated to support student financial aid programs, but a significant portion will be used for key strategic initiatives, including funds to create the OER Course Development and Implementation Grant Program. This grant program, as I'm sure most of you already know, is a competitive program established to enhance the quality and online course offerings and to reduce the cost of educational materials for students at Texas higher education institutions. We're excited to have 3 technical assistance partners to work with us with our OER course development and implementation grantees as well. OpenStax at Bryce University, the Center for Content Curation and Program Development at Dallas College, and the Charles A. Dana Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Those are our 3 technical assistance partners for this particular program. In addition to the grant program, the Coordinating Board recently launched the OERTX Repository. This repository was created through a partnership between the Coordinating Board and the Institute for the Study of Knowledge Management in Education, ISKME, and is made possible by an appropriation from the Texas legislature. During the previous legislative session, House Bill 3652 provided $250,000 for standing up this customized OER repository. Now, the repository will have very important functions for our agency on multiple fronts. The primary purpose of the repository, or the primary purpose of OERTX, will be the creation of our grant program, will be the creation of e-textbooks and other instructional materials used by Texas higher education institutions, as well as other resources that are created or remixed to meet the needs of Texas students and faculty. Over the course of the academic year and beyond, we'll partner closely with institutions across the state, many of whom, of course, are on this webinar, to support their faculty in the development and adaptation of digital resources, especially resources for Texas core curriculum courses, co-requisite college readiness courses, and career and technical workforce education programs, all of which will be available at no charge to students. OERTX is a strategic investment that will help keep thousands of students on track to complete high-value credentials and enter the workforce with the kind of education tomorrow's economy will demand. And finally, to further our commitment to advancing digital learning Commissioner Keller has approved the creation of a new division of digital learning, which I'm glad to say will be led by a new Assistant Commissioner for Digital Learning, and that is, as most of you heard yesterday, Dr. Michelle Singh. We're very fortunate and so excited that Dr. Singh will be joining our staff here at the Coordinating Board officially in this capacity as our newest Assistant Commissioner next Monday, November 16th. Many of you know Dr. Singh. She joins the agency from Texas A&M Corpus Christi, where she has served as the Associate Vice President for Teaching and Learning Technologies since 2018, and she has a very long tenure in higher education and has held many different positions, including as chair of the the Texas Distance Learning Association, a member of the U.S. Distance Learning Association Board, and perhaps most significantly is the former chair of the Coordinating Board's Learning Technology Advisory Committee, or LTAC. We're excited to have Dr. Singh join our team and to lead our dedicated staff members like Dr. Kyla Torrey, who has been so instrumental in staffing all of our digital learning efforts thus far. I want to thank each of you for being champions of distance education and digital learning, the tremendous growth and accomplishments that have happened in this space as a result of dedicated practitioners such as yourself. Again, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for being partners with our agency as we seek to advance digital learning and create a bigger footprint for the benefit, of course, of all post-secondary students across the state. Kyla, back to you. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Deputy Commissioner Martinez. It's great to have you with us, and we, of course, welcome you to stay, but we also understand if you have other things on your plate. We're going to jump right in today, and first, as Deputy Commissioner Martinez has said, happy National Distance Learning Week. I know that many of you with us today are innovators in the field of distance learning and digital learning, and we're so happy to have you with us today for our webinar. I'm going to talk a little bit about our new division of digital learning first here at the Coordinating Board. So Deputy Commissioner Martinez talked a little bit about it, and of course, Dr. Singh is coming on board as our new Assistant Commissioner. The new division of digital learning is going to partner with institutions to expand digital success and foster quality in digital learning. So we're really hoping to partner with institutions, hoping to support institutions in the digital learning work that is already going on and future digital learning work in Texas. Commissioner Keller said that digital learning plays a vitally important role in shaping the future of higher education for Texas. And when the pandemic disrupted higher education institutions earlier this year, educators across the state, nation, and world had to pivot very quickly to digital learning. This monumental shift put a spotlight on the critical need to invest in advancing innovation and digital learning. Certainly the pandemic made things a little bit quick to go to digital learning, but we know that digital learning is a very important part of the overall practice of our institutions of higher education, and we want to support that. So we have a few projects that are going to be under the new division of digital learning. First is the OERTX Repository, which we'll give a little demo of later. It is a repository of free and open resources that are either created in Texas or most used in Texas, are sort of geared for Texas higher education. We have our OER grant programs, both at the state level and with the federal GEER funds, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then a new digital learning clearinghouse, which will be a tool, a sort of dashboard in order to support institutions to share best practices in digital learning. So let's talk a little bit about a background of OER opportunities in Texas. First of all, there's been a lot of legislative interest in OER over the last two legislative sessions and last 2 or 3 years because of this high cost of instructional materials and the impact that bringing down the cost of instructional materials has on student retention and completion. We really think that use of OER by institutions of higher education is in alignment with our 60 by 30 goals, especially the student debt goal and keeping learning affordable, but also our completion goal in that, if if students are more easily able to afford their education, then they are certainly more easily able to complete. This is just the definition of OER as it's defined in statute in Texas, just so that we're all on the same page in what we're talking about here when we talk about OER, or open educational resources. Basically, teaching, learning, and research resources that are either in the public domain or have an intellectual property license that allows for use, adaptation, and redistribution. So not only are they free, but they can also be remixed, reused, retained by people other than the original author with attribution. So taking us back a couple of years, in 2017, Senate Bill 810 was passed, which had a few pieces that related to OER, one of which was a feasibility study on whether or not it was a good idea to start an OER repository for Texas higher education. So the study was done, and the report that came out of that study had the following recommendations. First, that we should open a statewide OER portal, but that we should not do that completely from scratch, rather work with OER Commons to develop and maintain the portal. To ensure that the portal links to repositories using a wide range of OER, to incentivize faculty to use OER and use OER through the portal, to require that resources that were developed with state funds be contributed to the portal and also be licensed with a Creative Commons license that allows for that free use and adaptation that I talked about. And that this should be a long-term project, that we should have a long-term resource awareness program and try and really make this part of the culture of Texas to use this OER portal. SB 810 also established the state OER grant program. This was to encourage faculty at our institutions of higher education to engage with open educational resources. So the OER grant program specifically targets faculty who want to either adopt or modify or redesign or create a course that uses only open educational resources. In 2018, we awarded 15 grant awards to faculty at various institutions in the state. And in October of this year, another 20 OER grant awards were announced. 6 development grants, which are grants that involve the creation of new OER, and 14 implementation grants, which involve the implementation of existing OER into courses. These grants were specifically, both in 2018 and 2020, are specifically for Texas core curriculum courses. Then in 2019, we did a landscape survey of OER use and adoption in Texas. This was a partnership with Digitex and also the Institute for the Study of Knowledge Management and Education. This landscape survey report was very broad and looked at a lot of areas of OER use in Texas, and found that about 51% of institutions either had OER policies or programs or were intending to have them soon. So more than half of the institutions in the state were either already using OER or interested in doing so. And then we looked at institutions that were sort of engaging in best practices around OERs that had both policies and programs in support of OER in the state. And there were a few things that were revealed through that landscape study, and they were that these institutions that had both policies and programs in place generally had a centralized OER committee or office, that they allocated funding to OER and particularly prioritized funding for faculty adoption and use, that they offered faculty incentives. That seems to be a theme. Yes, that they have library staff who are trained on OER. This is very important. Library staff are a vital part of the OER adoption process, and that they collect data on the impact of the OER that they're using at their institutions, whether that be cost data or student grades, retention, things like that. And next legislative session came along, the 86th Texas legislature in 2019, and that legislature appropriated funds both for the creation of a state repository of OER and for the additional OER state grants that I mentioned that were awarded in October of this year. So we at the coordinating board were asked by the legislature to create the state repository for OER, and we partnered with OER Commons to do so. The ISKME, which is the creators of OER Commons, to create OERTX, which is the OER repository for Texas. And I'm going to talk just a little bit about the background, and then later on we'll have a little demo of the site itself. So again, we contracted with ISKME as not to try and do this from scratch. ISKME, who created OER Commons. OER Commons, I'm sure most of you are familiar with, but it's a large international repository of OER. And we developed the OERTX site with their expertise. It was launched on September 1st of this year, so it's only really a couple of months old. And the materials developed with OER grants will be available through OERTX. The materials developed with the 2018 grants are already in the process of being uploaded or linked to the OERTX site. And then once materials are created or adapted by the 2020 grantees, those will also be available through the site. Now let's talk a little bit about what's upcoming for OER in Texas and the GEER initiatives that we have going on right now. So Governor Abbott announced a bit ago that the state of Texas was going to invest $175 million of the GEER funds in higher education. These are the funds, as Deputy Commissioner Martinez mentioned, that came out of the federal CARES Act for the coronavirus. The vast majority of the funding that came to the coordinating board is going towards direct student aid, but a portion of the funds will be used for online learning support, both the Digital Learning Clearinghouse and the OER course implementation grants and technical assistance grants that I'll talk about in a moment. The Digital Learning Clearinghouse. This is a project that is in the future, but the idea is to launch a website that can curate effective practices and resources about digital learning for Texas institutions of higher education. The idea is to support faculty and instructional support staff and really build on the work that's already being done in digital learning in Texas and share best practices, share research, that sort of thing. There will be in the future a request for applications in order to populate this site with examples of effective online learning practices. And so I would keep an eye out for that, but that will be sometime in the future. Currently, what we have going on is our OER course development and implementation grant program. So these are matching grants for public and independent institutions. And the idea is that teams of faculty and support at the institutions will either develop new or redesign existing OER for, again, the most frequently transferred Texas core curriculum courses, but we're also expanding this from the state grant program to focus on co-requisite courses for college readiness and also workforce courses in high value fields. This grant was, the RFA was released very recently and it is open right now. The website to apply for the grant is right there, highered.texas.gov/OER-GEER. You can find all of the instructions and application forms and everything you need to apply for the grant there. There are 3 rounds of this grant. So the first deadline is November 17th, which is coming up quickly, but there will be 2 additional rounds, one December 15th and one January 11th. So if you don't make it for the first round, don't despair, there's more time. As part of this OER course development and implementation grant program, we have technical assistance partners, and they are with us today, and they're going to talk a little bit about the sort of technical assistance they can offer applicants and awardees of this grant program. So the idea is that our technical assistance partners will be able to provide guidance, help with awardees in implementing the grant, but particularly in these 3 areas of Texas core curriculum, co-requisite, and workforce education courses. So our 3 partners are OpenStax at Rice University, Dallas College, and the Dana Center at the University of Texas at Austin. And they are going to talk a little bit about their institutions and the sort of technical assistance that they can offer to grantees. So I'm going to turn it over to them. I think first up we have OpenStax.
Yeah, so hi everyone. I'm Sonia Bennett-Brand. I'm on the institutional relations team at OpenStax. So I'm just going to give some super quick background on who we are and what we do, talk a little bit about some online workshops we'll be doing, and then hand it over to Anthony, our editorial director, who will talk about the technical support we'll be providing. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, we're part of Rice University, which is a nonprofit organization. The biggest part of what we do is publishing 42 free openly licensed textbooks, and there are many more on the way. We work on some other projects as well. We create courseware and homework technology. We do research into both kind of learning science and cognitive science, and also OER outcomes. And we do advocacy work directly with institutions and with students as well. Next slide, please. So one thing we'll be doing as a part of this project is offering online workshops. These have not been scheduled yet, so stay tuned for the actual registration links and all that kind of thing. But these are the topics that we will be covering. So everything from how to talk about OER on your campus, how to design course materials and instruction inclusively and in an equitable way, how to involve students, both with ed tech and also potentially in the actual development of open materials, and then some topics that are more closely related to that technical assistance and kind of project management help, managing and organizing projects, setting goals, setting milestones, things in that arena. So I'll leave this up for just a couple more seconds, and then I will hand it over to Anthony.
Thanks so much, Sonia. Let everybody absorb that for a second. And I guess we can move on to the next slide. What you'll see, I don't know if the Zoom is, I can't quite see the whole thing. I hope everybody else can, but I'll talk a lot. Our technical assistance is mostly following along the same lines as the webinars and workshops that we'll be offering. We will be able to help the grantees with developing the approach to their project, thinking about elements of project management, of considerations of formats and styles, how they might analyze courses. For example, if you are going to work on a co-requisite course, for example, are there ways that we could help you analyze how different schools are implementing that co-requisite approach, and how it's working for everyone, where it is working, where it isn't, challenges they have, and ways that the OER you create could support and meet some of those needs, especially those that are currently unmet. Same sort of thing around survey development administration. And then we would, similar, I won't read the whole slide, but basically the same idea around editorial development, helping to analyze whether there's existing OER, thinking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and cultural responsiveness in your development process, guidelines and sourcing, and also if there's going to be peer review involved, helping develop those instruments and so on. And then on the production side, we would move into, helping everybody analyze accessibility, thinking about the art process, illustrations process, maybe supporting some of that ourselves, and so on. So these would, again, follow on our workshops, and these would be available for the grantees, and we'd put either our team members, myself and others that work in these fields that help develop our textbooks and courseware, they'd be working directly with the grantees. Looking forward to working with you all.
Thank you all.
And if you move to the last slide, I think it has Anthony and I's email addresses on it if anyone is interested in reaching out with any questions.
Well, I'll leave that up for just a second because I know people are going to have questions. Well, thank you all. We're going to move on to our next technical assistance partner now, and that's going to be Dallas College. So I will hand it over to our.
Hey everybody, good afternoon. My name is Greg Morris. Kyla, thanks so much for the introduction. I'm currently the Senior Vice Provost for Academic Services at Dallas College. And today I'm joined by Carla Damron, who serves as our our Dean for Center of Excellence in Teaching and Learning. For those of you not familiar, Dallas College in July became a singly accredited institution, and out of that single accreditation from 7 colleges to 1, the new area called academic services was created. The reason I mention that is it kind of informs some of our direction relative to our participation in this grant. We've developed a Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning. We've also established an academic incubator where new programmatic ideas will be fleshed out and developed. And then also we've established a new Office of e-learning. Across that spectrum and that portfolio of programs are how we're coming together to really be able to hopefully provide some expertise, but also services as it relates to this grant. So Kyla, if you could go to the next slide. As it was referenced earlier, we are taking a specific approach to the technical assistance in and around WECM courses or career and technical education. So one of the goals that we hope to be able to provide to other institutions across the state will be to really look and explore not only at the course level, but also programmatic level across the CTE space. This is an area that's been an interest of ours and an area where we've done some development around OER, particularly as we look at the way in which many times WECM is being parsed out, not only in the non-credit side, but also in the credit, and looking at ways that we can innovatively develop digital resources and content that really help students as they move through either a course level that leads to some type of industry certification or up through a programmatic area. So our approach will be as follows, and this is some of the services that we hope to be able to provide. We're going to leverage a team of coaches. These will be individuals who either have external experience or internal experience at Dallas College in assisting in this area, and they will help guide institutions as they have discussions around what OER approach you hope to accomplish. Similar to other schools, we'll be leveraging as well some in-depth library coaches and library resources, as well as faculty resources specifically around certain WECM areas and CTE areas. We do have a broad programmatic approach around health sciences, allied health, IT, and also business and finance. So that gives you kind of a broad overview, but I definitely want to ask Carla Damron, who is on the call as well, to provide some additional insight that I may have missed or forgotten. And then we'll have our contact information at the end as well. Carla?
Yes, I think Greg really lined up what we can offer to provide technical assistance. I think what we'll need is to find out who is actually coming to us, that we can align them with our best resources here at Dallas College. So I think the WECM area is open for development. There hasn't been a lot of development in our career and technical areas. So we're looking forward to being able to make an impact and build that out with the resources from this grant.
Carla, thanks so much. And Kyla, if you go to the next slide, we have set up, this is our project lead team. And you can see the names here. Beth is actually overseeing our academic incubator. Dr. DiPaolo leads up our e-learning office. Of course, Carla, who you've met, and myself. We have set up an email address as well if there are questions related to some of the OER expertise and services that we will provide. So Kata, thank you so much.
Thank you all. Okay, so we will move right along to our third technical assistance provider. That will be the Dana Center at the University of Texas at Austin, and Connie Richardson is with us to talk about that.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here to talk to you about creating equitable and effective open access resources. You may be familiar with our work with Math Pathways, a huge Math Pathways symbol up in the upper right-hand corner. But if you're not in the math arena, stick with me, please, because we do offer services cross-disciplinary. And we work with institutions and systems to enact change that improves student outcomes and more equitable student outcomes. And so often that is in mathematics, but we also support other stakeholders across institutions and across systems. Probably most pertinent to today's work is that a large body of that work includes classroom level work, providing professional learning to faculty and staff, as well as supporting teams as they work collaboratively, just facilitating their work as they work on equitable and effective changes. Some of those changes have been like structural changes like co-requisites, for example, rather than moving from traditional developmental. So many of you may have attended some of the workshops we did when the legislation around co-requisites first was enacted. And now we can move more into that classroom level course content arena. So we feel like we're well positioned to support your team as you work collaboratively on this grant project. Next slide, please. So as we think about course design and what kind of support we offer, there's a couple of big buckets. One is redesigning content, mainly around mathematics, I would say. Redesigning pedagogy, not limited to mathematics. We do a lot of cross-disciplinary work there. And then kind of a subset of the content piece is designing co-requisite support materials. And so we will be doing webinars around these. We also can connect you with faculty who are doing this work on the ground, and we look forward to that. So when we think about these buckets of content and pedagogy, if we could go to the next slide, we'll focus on content for a minute. So we can provide services that help you to focus on deep understanding of concepts by first identifying what the content is that's truly essential, and then that gives you the time to work on deep conceptual understanding. We can help you to contextualize your content in ways that are authentic and relevant to students' lives. For example, if you have a particular dominant workforce area in your region, then contextualizing your content to include some of that workforce content as well as additional content that's relevant to students' lives. We've seen that we need to be flexible for a variety of delivery modalities. So face-to-face, online, hybrid, so on. So we want to think about that as we're designing that, what if we have to make this shift? How can we help instructors make that shift? And also think about content in terms of embedding some support for students so that they grow as learners, become part of the academic community, especially when you think about the lower division, high transfer courses that are a focus of this grant project, that you've got some early learners in those classes. So really helping them to develop their strategies around learning and to address psychosocial factors. We can provide support around designing that into your courses so that it is seamless. And finally, you know, a lot of textbooks, most textbooks are strictly content, and a lot of OER resources currently kind of reflect that. They look kind of textbooky, and you may have ideas about, you know, how you implement the content in your classroom, but that kind of information usually isn't in the textbooks, whether they're OER or commercial publisher. And so thinking about how do we communicate to both, you know, for transparency and consistency within our department, how do we communicate to all the faculty what we intend in implementing the content, and then to future faculty who may pick up your OER from the repository, then helping you to develop out instructor materials that will make for a better implementation of the content in the classroom. That's something that that we really like to focus on as well. So those are some of, you know, under the content bucket, and this applies both to the you know, college level content and to co-requisite content. If we move on to the pedagogy bucket, you might have wonderful pedagogical ideas. On the other hand, you may want some support in figuring out how do you incorporate some new pedagogies into these materials that you're developing. So some of the areas to consider are fostering active engagement with the content, promoting student discourse, because we know that that leads to deeper conceptual understanding, incorporating equitable and culturally responsive teaching strategies. And then all three of those are important and can be difficult in the virtual space. And so as you're incorporating those, you want to think about how do we do this virtually, especially if we have to go asynchronous, and still build that community of inquiry with the students, so that they are still getting that conceptual understanding from that student discourse. They are still engaging actively and not just checking the boxes of their online work. So you know, we'd really like to help on that pedagogical side too. When it's also important to think about how do you communicate that to faculty, right? So all of these ideas, not just for your own purposes, but how do you embed it in the materials, again, with instructor notes that communicate to the broader field how you envision that these things take place in the classroom that is using the OER materials that you develop. So I just say those are the areas that we'd love to help you with. Good luck with your grant application, and we look forward to working with you. And Kyle, I think my information's on the next slide. Thanks.
Thank you, and thank you all so much. I think it's clear from those three presentations that we really have a focus on instructional design and creating excellent quality OER through this grant program. And so we're excited to work with all three of our grantee institutions, our technical assistance partners, and all of you out there who are planning on submitting an application. I am going to transition a little bit to talking about the OERTX site itself. So I'm going to give a short demonstration of what the features of the site are, what it looks like. Again, if you were to apply for one of our OER course development and implementation grants, the OER materials that you use would be either uploaded or linked to the OERTX site. So it's important that we understand how it is used. So this is OERTX. You can find it by going to oertx.highered.texas.gov. And if you're familiar with OER Commons, you'll see that this looks a lot like OER Commons in the search bar and the way it's structured a little bit. There are numerous ways to search. So you can just sort of type in whatever it is you're looking for. You can search by subject, and the subjects are the metadata for the subjects have been sort of aligned with Texas core curriculum and other subject matters that are specific to Texas. You can look by education level, and you can look by course inventory, and you'll see that there are courses in here that are linked to the Academic Course Guide Manual or the ACGM, and also the Workforce Education Course Manual, the WECM. So if you look for a particular, if you look on a particular course inventory, you'll find courses that have been linked to that course guide manual. So if I just search for math, a number of resources pop up, and you'll see all of the resources that are for math related within OERTX. If I pick one that I want to look at, you'll see you'll get to this page where you can get a little bit more information about the resource, where it comes from, what type of material it is, the academic level. You can leave comments if you have an account on the site, and you can create an account just with an email. It's free and open to everyone. You can apply tags if you think this tags to a particular subject. You can align to a particular course within the ACGM or the WECM. You can give a star rating on this resource if you've used it and you think it's great. You can give it 5 stars. You can save the resource. You can view the resource from here. And if it's your own resource that you have created, then you'll be able to edit it as well. And I'll show you another way that you can use the resource and sort of adapt it in a minute. So that's one way of searching, just to sort of type in the first, in the bar. Another way is to look at collections that are already curated. So we have a few collections that have already been curated by topic or by institution. And you'll find in there just, information about OER basics. What is OER? How do I use it? That sort of thing. And these collections are an ongoing project. So we will be creating new collections as we go along. There'll be a collection for the grantees as they develop as they upload or link their materials. If you have suggestions for other collections that you think would be useful, or your institution would like a collection, feel free to contact us, and that's something that we can certainly discuss. But these are sort of shelves where all the resources related to OER basics are kept, or all the resources created by the University of Texas at Austin, where they are kept. There are other ways that the site is organized. One is into hubs. So you'll see here, there are a few different hubs on the site. Some are related to topic, like this one, getting started with OER, is the hub for all of the trainings that we're going to be doing moving forward with ISKME. So you'll find videos of former trainings, announcements about upcoming trainings, and other materials under this hub. There are also institutions that have hubs. So you'll see that Alamo Colleges has their own hub. And within the hub, you have information that is specific to Alamo College. They can have groups specific to Alamo College, and they can have collections of resources that are organized in such a way that it makes sense to Alamo College faculty. So all of these resources that are in the collection are available through the main site to anyone, but they are organized under the Alamo College hub in such a way that the faculty at Alamo College find it most easy to use it that way. So there are collections, there are hubs, there are groups. Groups are kind of the social media aspect of the site. So anyone with an account can create a group, and within the group you can collaborate, you can save folders of resources, you can have discussions with other members of the group. So you'll see here, this is a group from a training that we did a few weeks ago. They've added some of the resources that we talked about in that training. They're all in folders over here. If you're a member of this group, you can see discussions are already happening about collaboration. And so it's a way for the site to be used as sort of a meeting point and a collaboration spot for faculty and librarians and instructional designers and anyone who finds it useful to collaborate through the site that way. There are a couple of ways to add OER to the site. One is to submit from the web. So you just, if you have a bunch of OER materials that are housed at your institutional repository, for example, as long as they're not behind a password protected wall, you can add the link here, add some metadata so that it's searchable within the site. And then when someone finds it within OERTX, it will direct them outward to your repository where that resource is housed. You can also create resources within OpenAuthor. So OpenAuthor is an authoring tool where you can add a title and images and content by either typing or importing. You can add various other resources, videos, PDFs, images, all of those things. You can add instructor notes for others who come and find this resource to let them know the best way you think to engage with that resource. And you can have multiple sections. So you can have sections for each chapter of a book or whatever makes sense for your particular course. So that's OpenAuthor. I'm going to show you one more neat thing about OpenAuthor. So if you find a resource that's been created within the OpenAuthor tool, like Amy Petrus is one of our 2018 OER grantees, and she created a number of resources for chemistry. So if you find a resource that's been created within the OpenAuthor tool, you can remix that resource from the OpenAuthor tool. So if I hit remix, it will make me a copy of Amy Petrus's resource, and then I can adapt it as I see fit to fit my course. And let me just show you how that works. So you'll see it's all of the information is in there, and I can change things. And this is a copy, so it doesn't it doesn't affect her resource, but it will be mine to play with, and it will attribute her. So you can move things around, you can get rid of things, that sort of thing. The other thing to show you is that, let me go back to the OpenAuthor tool. The OpenAuthor tool has a number of neat little tools within it. One of them is accessibility checker. So if you have content within OpenAuthor, you're building resources within OpenAuthor, you can check accessibility, and it will go through that resource and give you ideas about how to make it more accessible for your students. That is the basics of the site. You see from here, from the main page, you can find the collections, you can find OpenAuthor, you can find the community in the groups. Again, anyone is welcome to create an account. You come up here, you create an account with your email, and it's open to everyone. And at that point, you can create your own groups. If you want to, if your institution is interested in creating a hub, like Alamo College has had, where you can sort of have a little bit more control over how you organize collections and things like that, that's a possibility. Again, you can contact me, and my contact information will be at the end of this presentation. We have a couple of institutions in process, and you saw that Alamo Colleges and Austin Community College already have hubs up and running. Okay. So how do you become part of our OERTX community? There are a number of ways. First, explore the site. Adopt some of the OER that's on the site. All the OER on there has either been most used by faculty in Texas or created by faculty in Texas. And so it's meant to be useful to you. You can suggest collections if you think there's a collection that would be particularly useful to have on the collections page of the site. Feel free to suggest one. There is a way to integrate the the site with your learning management system so that you would be able to search the site from within Blackboard or Canvas and upload resources that way directly. If you're interested in that, feel free to put a support ticket in on the site. There's a support button towards the right of the site. We suggest that you do that at the institutional level and not the individual faculty level. So have your LMS guru reach out and we'll get that set up for your institution. You can create OER. You can design modules within OpenAuthor. You can upload links to OER that's already in use and useful to you. You can apply for the grant program that's going on right now to either create new or implement existing OER. And you can collaborate through the site by creating a group, suggesting a hub that would be useful, or joining one of our webinars. You're on one right now, and we're going to have more into the future. So this is the OERTX Repository site. This is where you can find information about the grant program that's going on right now, the GEER grant program, and also the email that will go directly to the grant program email address. And then my email address is there as well. If you have a question directly for me about OERTX or any of the things that we've been discussing. That was quite a bit of information thrown at you in an hour. So I'm going to stop this so you can all see all of our presenters. So I'm sure there are many questions. I want to first say that the grant program is open right now. I think I said that we have 3 rounds. So the first round, November 17th, the second, December 15th, and the third, January 11th. So let's go to questions. I'm sure that I will be able to answer some, and then our technical assistance partners will be able to answer some as we go along. Our first one, will technical partners help during the writing of the grant as to what resources they can provide? That is a good question. So our technical assistance partners are providing assistance to applicants as well as awardees. The assistance that they're providing to applicants will be primarily in the form of these webinars that we'll be doing. The 3 of them, the 3 technical assistance partners will be doing sort of deep dive webinars, each on their own, on the assistance that they are able to provide. That should be, we're tentatively scheduling that the beginning of December right now, so after the Thanksgiving holiday. So there'll be, I would keep an eye out for that. Those will be announced as soon as possible, and we'll get registration open for them, and then you'll be able to learn more information about what each technical assistance provider is capable and willing to provide. Okay, so developmental grants require cross-institutional collaboration. Does this mean that the OER designers in each IHE must collaborate with colleagues in other IHEs in development of each course? Or could each IHE independently develop courses as part of a collaborative undertaking? So yes, the development grants do require an element of cross-institutional collaboration. Meaning that, well, there are 2 ways of doing this. So you can have a sort of main lead institution who's applying for the grant and will work with other institutions for peer review, for instructional design, for implementing, for things like that. So you have the lead institution, and they collaborate with the individuals at other institutions to provide help for that particular grant. Or you can form consortia of institutions. Up to 5 institutions are able to apply for up to 5 grants as part of a consortia where you're all working on the same course or courses, and you're scaling the OER work that's being done across institutions in that way. I hope that answered your question. If it didn't, continue to write one. Will you be providing us the metadata tags? I'm not sure I understand what that question means. The metadata tags for the site. Yeah, I'm not sure I understand that question, so please elaborate, and we will try to get that answered. Please provide more information about what grant applications for implementing OER would entail and what are the funds intended to be used for. So I'm going to, of course, suggest that all of you go to the highered.texas.gov/OER GEER website and read through the RFA. It gives very detailed specifics about how to apply for the grant and what exactly is being asked of institutions who are applying. The funds are intended to be used for, there are two types of grants. There are development grants, where the funds are intended to be used for the development of new OER. And there are implementation grants, where the funds are intended to be used for implementing existing OER within courses. So you can apply for either or both of those for a particular course or courses. And the funds would then go towards either developing the new OER or implementing the existing OER. So they're for faculty teams, instructional design, library resources, all of those things. Does the grant cover faculty release to develop an OER? So the short answer is yes, I guess. So the grant cannot cover faculty salaries except for like additional sort of summer salary or stipend. And part of the in-kind contributions, since these are matching grants, can be like a faculty release for time to develop the OER, something like that. So it's possible, yes, that the grant could cover faculty release to develop an OER. I love it. So what is this program going to look like in the future when it's fully grown and fully functional? I'm sure I don't know. But we have lots of visions, and of course we will have a division for digital learning beginning November 16th. So stay tuned. We're basically, the idea is that we want to be in support of institutions as they go forth to, implement best practices both in digital learning and OER as part of that. So it will be an ongoing process, of course, and an ongoing project, but we're really excited for this new division and the support that we're going to be able to provide at the Coordinating Board for Digital Learning. I know there's a lot of great practice in digital learning going on in Texas, and I think, at the Coordinating Board, we hope that we'll be able to collaborate and have institutions collaborate with each other to really scale that effort and make sure that everybody reaps the benefits of what people are doing in digital learning in Texas. There are lots of technical questions about the grant, which I expected, so that's good. So if an institution is part of a consortia, can that same institution apply independently as well? Yes. You can apply, you can turn in multiple applications, up to one development application and one implementation application for a course. So if you want to do applications for multiple courses at your institution, one as part of a consortium and one independently, something like that, you will of course need to have some cross-institutional collaboration for a development grant, but you can certainly submit multiple applications. I'm going to skip down, so maybe we can get some of our technical assistance providers involved in this conversation too. If faculty wish to work with a technical assistant partner post-award, should we contact them individually and include them as a partner in the grant application? So as part of the award, you will need to, or as part of the application, excuse me, as part of the application, you will need to talk about the sort of technical assistance that you think you might use from our technical assistance partners. And then we will, depending on if you are awarded, then we will get you in contact with that technical assistance partner to provide that service for you. But again, our technical assistance partners will be providing some services for applicants, information, webinars, helping you to sort of work through the design of your applications through various informational events like this. So stay tuned for those. Those are coming up. If 3 colleges are working on 5 courses, could college A work exclusively on course A, college B on course B, and college C on course C? Or do all 3 colleges need to collaborate on the development of each course? For the development grants, you need to collaborate with at least one other institution for a course. An application is for a course, and so you will need to collaborate for each course. Can you set a metadata schema in the OERTX repository? Oh, I see what you mean. If you link or upload resources within the OERTX repository, it will walk you through how to choose metadata that's available, so that it will walk you through the process of making it searchable within the site, so that there's not confusion over, yes, math versus mathematics, something like that. It'll walk you through the available metadata. Okay, I'm trying to see if there are any. Michelle Singh, I just saw your name.
We're clarifying some questions on the Q&A that
Yes.
you've already answered.
Do you still want to clarify or no? You're good. Okay. So I just searched the Allied Health database on OERTX. Is it possible that there are no such assets yet in this area? Yes, it is possible. So this is the beginnings of this project. As we said, it just launched on September 1st. We focused when we started out on resources to address mostly lower division Texas core curriculum courses. That's part of the reason for this grant program, is to help build out workforce courses, co-requisite courses, those types of things, as well as bolster the Texas core curriculum courses. We thought that would be, we collaborated, talked to a lot of institutional representatives about this and what was the best way to sort of go about populating the site to begin with. And the lower division Texas core curriculum courses, there are a lot of good materials out there already, and those are high enrollment courses, so they're sort of the biggest bang for our buck right off the bat, right? We can reach as many students as possible to begin with. But again, this is an ongoing project, and we will certainly need help from institutions in populating the site with additional resources that have been successful at your institution. So we are reaching out to institutions in ever expanding numbers and working on either setting up hubs with particular collections for those institutions, or collections of resources that have been created by those institutions, or uploading resources that are being used by your faculty. All of these things are possible. So if you are interested and you have successfully used resources that you would like to be in the site, we hope that you will help us get them there. Okay. Somebody says, sorry I was late, can we start over? That's funny. We are recording, so we will send a recording to people who registered for sure. My understanding of the RFA is that it precludes faculty salaries as part of the college's matching commitment, but that the grant pays faculty salaries. Not exactly. So the grant can pay certainly for work that's done for faculty, not what it can't sort of supplant your salary, but it can pay for additional work done on the grant, and like a summer salary, for example. So yes, faculty salaries are sort of not part of the ask and not part of the matching commitment, but more it's for additional work done on this grant program. What do you foresee as your biggest obstacles in achieving the goals for this program? That is a great question. And because I've been talking so much, I would really like other people to help me answer this question. I think as our partners in this, I think there will definitely be obstacles, but I would like to hear, working in the world of OER, what you all think might be the biggest obstacles in sort of implementing this grant program and moving forward with OERTX and all of our OER efforts.
I'll say a few words. We've actually talked a little bit about this with our group at Dallas College of how we can really begin to move the needle, not only locally and regionally around this, but particularly in some of these spaces, as you had mentioned earlier, Kyla, with some of these maybe smaller CTE programs, but that have potential to grow not only to meet workforce demands. So we're really interested in being able to, where can we work with other partners to apply the best of our resources to those CTE programmatic areas, which really have the biggest impact in our communities and in our efforts, because the goal is, of course, to drive more students into these programs with this, with these tools as well to lower their costs. So that's something we're really interested in. I know there was a question earlier on about allied health as well. We really like the idea of looking at concept-based relative to some of the allied health and looking at how do we build portable and modular skills around certain common themes across multiple areas, from nursing to allied health to EMS, and how we embed those within curriculum. So those are some of the things we've kind of talked about internally. We'd love to be able to work with others on.
I'll just jump in and say that the pandemic has really stressed faculty, and it's amazing to me the faculty that are still willing to take on even more. So for example, to apply for one of these grants, pandemic has also just reinforced the need to lower costs for students. And so I just applaud everybody that is willing to jump in and work on this project and make things better for students. And so we want to do what we can to support you so that maybe this process isn't as stressful. So whatever we can do to help you do that, we'd be happy to do.
And I think I'd say that I think, kind of putting those two thoughts together, some of the challenges are often, I mean, if we're working on a consortia basis, bringing multiple institutions together and at the same time trying to create resources that help locally, within 2 or 3 schools, but also can expand and be used across the state and maybe even beyond, coming to agreement on exactly what that is. OpenStax, we are known mostly for making textbooks, but textbooks aren't necessarily the answer. It's coming to an agreement of what might work. But I think, like Connie said, I mean, that's what we're really here for, helping come up with the best, the best that we can offer, at least to help faculty make those decisions and apply them in a way that's going to be adoptable and useful both in their institutions and widespread.
And I'm going to jump in and just basically reiterate what a lot of people have already said. I think one of the biggest obstacles that we have is everyone truly understanding what OER are. The letters are very popular. They're very simplistic to say, but it is a complex issue. You have to talk about it's a layered issue. There's definitely different levels of adoption, and there's different levels of curation, and there are so many different angles when you talk about OER. And one of our biggest goals in introducing this OERTX idea is to bring awareness of OER and what it can do for education, what it can do for our students, what it can do for our faculty and our institutions, and how do we come together and make sure that we can support that creativity, that innovation, to reach a level where we can save money for our students, which is definitely a perk, but also bring those high quality resources that we know the expertise is in Texas on, that we can share that expertise and not have to be bound by a geographical area, but actually have them shared with everyone in the United States and really bring a focus onto what Texans do well, and that is teach and learn.
Yeah, thank you all. There's so much great work being done in Texas around OER and digital learning just in general, but OER specifically. And I think it's time for us to come together and really scale that work in a way that we have to share what we've been doing with each other so that we can make it bigger. And I think hopefully OERTX is a way for us to be able to do that and also share everything that we've been doing, with the rest of the country, certainly. Again, OERTX is open to everyone, so we wanted to make it as open as possible, and we really see that as being an important part of this, is getting everyone involved. So that was a great question. Thank you. I think there will be obstacles. We hope to help you overcome obstacles, and we hope that you will help us overcome some of these obstacles as we move forward, so we can all partner together in this work. Another technical question. Would I indicate a cost for the post-awards use of the technical assistant in the grant proposal budget? So the technical assistance will not cost the applicant money. So you don't have to propose a cost for that. As our technical assistance partners, the coordinating board is providing the funding for this to be able to happen, so that all of our applicants for the grant program and all of our awardees can really receive the best possible support in doing this. We think it's really we think it's really important to not just create OER and put it out there and put it on the site. I mean, that's easy enough to do, but also to really create quality resources that can be used across Texas, that can be used by multiple institutions and faculty, and that are really with a real focus on instructional design. And so we're hoping that this grant program and bringing in technical assistance will really help us to create some very quality OER that can be used by everyone in Texas and really across the country. If the consortia is across the system, may the system apply, or should one of the institutions? The eligible applicant is an institution, so you would have to apply at the institutional level for that. I'm just looking. So so I know that our deputy commissioner, and what he wanted to say and what all of us really want to say is that is to thank you for being with us, for your commitment to digital learning, to OER practice, and we are excited to move forward with all of these projects and to have your input as we do it. So really feel free at any point to reach out to me or to the OER email address, which will go to me, and you will find me eventually. And you know, we want you at your institutions to get involved in the site, to set up LMS integration, to build collections of resources, to really use it. We'd like it to be part of the culture of Texas higher education, to really go and use OERTX and have it be a useful tool for all of you. And we hope that this grant program will really, we hope that what will come out of it are some really useful resources for institutions across Texas. And of course, our technical assistance partners will be instrumental in helping that happen. Their expertise is going to be a really important part of this process. And I want to thank all of them for being here with us today to start this off. Again, they will each institution be doing a sort of deep dive webinar on the technical assistance that they can provide. So look for those announcements coming out as we move forward. I think I've answered all the questions that were in the Q&A, but feel free to put some more in if you like. Oh, thank you. Thank you, the rest of the new division. We're excited, we really are. I'm excited. I hope Michelle's excited too. She's great. Yeah, yeah, this is great. And we're happy to see what's gonna happen in the future. So I think Kate, I'm not sure if everyone got that, but the OER email is oer@highered.texas.gov. So feel free to reach out again, and anything, if you want any help with using the site, anything like that, feel free to reach out. Oh, we have another question about co-requisite courses. If you meant the design of the non-credit side of the co-requisite courses is very, some focus on study skills, others are building course-specific skills that are needed to remediate. If you're developing an OER resource for co-requisite courses, it have to be for the credit and non-credit side of the course. I mean, I can answer technically for the grant what has to happen, but I also would like to get some input on co-requisites just in general from you all, and the sort of support that you think you would provide for co-requisite courses. Technically for the grant, you technically for the grant, you're creating a whole course with OER. So I think that would include both the sort of credit and non-credit, both the course and the co-requisite portion of the course. So yes, is the answer to that. But I don't know if there's thoughts about what varied co-requisite support might look like.
I'll say that our recommendation would be that if you're not developing both, that you have a specific credit course in mind. So like a specific OER resource that you're building the co-rec for, rather than just having, here's a generic co-rec for college algebra, for example. We would really recommend that you have a specific college algebra resource in mind, that you're building support for that. So that is very tightly aligned. And then whether that qualifies for the grant or not, I think is a different story. Maybe that's more along the line of refining an existing course or something. I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
I'd just say I agree. I mean, I actually would defer very strongly to Connie on this this area, same thing. And also, I mean, we were all very cognizant of the fact that, yeah, co-recs are done so differently at so many different institutions. So, you know, I guess to speak sort of off the cuff, I would say, you know, sort of almost what would get the job done in terms of, you know, serving those students who need that support, and where the blend of credit, non-credit comes out of that. If it's effective, you know, it's likely a very valuable resource. But again, the technicalities of the grant is probably something, you know, I can't speak to, but I would address both of those.
Thank you all. Yeah, I think there's a lot of sort of room, I think, in your grant application to argue what's best for your institution or your consortium of institutions, as the case may be. So yes, while you are required through the terms of the grant to develop OER for sort of the complete course, you should and will, I'm sure, do what's best for your students at your institution. So. All right, it looks like we are out of, oh, nope. Well, you are welcome. Does any of our technical assistance partners have any last words that they want to impart before we let everyone go for the afternoon? I want to thank you all for being here again. We really appreciate it. We're very excited to work with you as our partners in this project. I'm excited to go to all of your webinars in the first week in December, so I'm looking forward to that. We will announce webinars in the sort of usual fashion through a memo to the institutions, but also we announce the things that we're doing now through the OERTX site. If you have an account, there's an announcements bell that will tell you when there are new things on the horizon. So take a look at that too. Okay. Well, thank you all for being here. We appreciate it. And again, if there are any questions at all about grant program, OERTX, anything related to OER or digital learning, feel free to reach out, and I'm sure we'll see some of you at the next webinar. So thank you.